I'm delighted today to introduce you to the fourth in our series of Optimising Health and Happiness for Humans and Your Animals. So today we're covering the fascinating subject of the placebo effect, the nocebo effect, and mind over matter, and how this impacts our health and our happiness. And once again, I'm back with my special guests, Dr. Timo Tastutar and Lance Schuttler. So in the first episode, we discussed what is health and how can we optimize it. We then went on to discuss in podcast 5, what is happiness? And in the third episode, podcast 6, we discussed the importance of how our choices affect our health and happiness. We've all heard of the placebo effect, but how many of us know about the nocebo effect and how both of these can have a huge impact on our health and happiness? When we really understand the influence that our subconscious mind has on our daily lives, then we can really start to take back control of our health and happiness. Once again, I really love the different perspectives that both Lance and Timo bring to this discussion. So sit back, enjoy with an open mind, and most importantly, please do let us know what you think in the comment sections or reviews. Thank you. So we are back today for the fourth in our series on optimizing health and happiness for humans and animals with my special guests, Dr. Timo Tastutar and Lance Schuttler. This is the fourth episode today, and we are going to be discussing the fascinating topic of the placebo effect, the nocebo effect, mind over matter, all sorts of interesting things around there. And please, if this is the first one you're listening to, please go back to the first in the series, which is podcast 4 on the platform. But before we get stuck in, let me introduce, for those of you that haven't met them, my guests. So Dr. Timo Tastutar is a veterinarian with a doctorate degree in equine cardiology. Timo has worked extensively in the equine and pet food and supplement industry in production, formulation and consultation for various companies. Dr. Timo specializes in animal physiology and movement with a broad experience in rehabilitation and nanomedicine for horses and pets. He's known for his ability to break down complicated scientific data and concepts and explain them to the general public. So we'll be testing you on that today, Timo. And he prefers natural solutions as much as possible, prioritizing long-term functional solutions to avoid the drastic, unwanted side effects often associated with short-term results.
Exactly. Thanks.
And Lance Schuttler graduated from the University of Iowa with a bachelor's degree in health science. Lance is the CEO and owner of Ascent Nutrition, a unique holistic nutrition company. And listeners of this podcast will know just how much Timo and I love your products, Lance. He's a contributing health and wellness writer at the Epoch Times, and his work includes the topic of regenerative agriculture, resource-based economies and quantum technologies. Now, Dr. Timo and I both work extensively with animals. And so in these podcasts, we're really trying to link in how this is all relevant to humans, but also non-human species as well, because we can learn so much from our animals. And obviously we want to be the best pet parents that we can. So really fascinating discussion topics today, placebo, nocebo effect, and why this is so relevant to everyone. So what is the placebo effect? Who wants to start with that one?
Timo, please lead us off.
I thought you would start. So placebo is, you think you're getting something, but you're not getting it. You still see the effects of the things you think you were getting. So this is shortly what placebo is. So make believe. So I tell you something that, yeah, you are going to drink this magic water and you will feel perfectly fine after drinking it. You drink it and suddenly you feel perfectly fine, although the water was tap water. So this is placebo. And it is a fascinating thing, still not well understood. Also, it is actually one of the things that science scratches the head the most with, because even in surgery, there is even placebo in knee surgery, that the surgeon just opens and closes the wound, and yeah, suddenly the knee works again and no pain. which is very terrifying for surgeons and very terrifying also for the whole medical industry, because yeah, we can also just tell you stories to make money instead of really studying something. On the other hand, placebo also works on animals, especially if their owners are really convinced that whatever they're going to do is going to help. And if the thing they're taking is not something that should have heavy side effects, then the placebo is a real thing. And it happens to me. But of course, there is also the opposite version of it. We will talk about that too.
Okay, so before we get into the opposite, what have you got to add to that, Lance, about the placebo effect?
I think Timo really summed it up very well. So I don't know if there's really going to be anything new, but that's really what I would just define it as well, is that you have this belief and this expectation that something's going to happen, whether it's like a supplement or a pill or a procedure, and the effect happens regardless of what was actually in that capsule or pill. And it is pretty wild how that happens. And I've read so many stories of that same thing too, Timo, of people going in for surgeries. They expect it's going to go well. They don't even perform the surgery, and the person comes out and they're significantly improved.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And one of the things I find really fascinating about it is a lot of the studies have actually shown physiological changes, neurological changes, etc. So it's not just the power of the belief is actually triggering the mind and body to produce different chemical responses in the body itself. So there is actually, a lot of people think it's just make believe, nothing's actually really happening, but actually there is a lot on a physiological level that can be measured now, and on a electromagnetic level happening.
Yeah, so this is the most funny part. So for me at least, and I use this a lot in all my lectures, but think about a triangle, and this triangle consists of an impulse, an energy to do something, and the material to do that thing we want to do. And when one of is missing, nothing happens. The thing is, though, there's a hierarchy, and the impulse has the highest rank between them, because the impulse is the one that triggers everything. So funny enough, the impulse, your mental impulse of thinking that you are going to heal yourself, because you always heal yourself, nothing can heal you. So this is a self-made thing. Not important what you get, medicine, whatever, it just facilitates something, but you do it yourself. Nothing can help you. You can heal yourself. All animals heal themselves. Organism heals itself. So, and the organism thinks, okay, so whatever bad was there, we can overcome it now, because no matter what. And they start to overcome it, right? So it is real physically, because the impulse is there, the signal is there. It's very important. I always talk about the signaling thing, but think about you're extremely thirsty. You drink a glass of cold water. What do you feel? You feel like you're refreshed, right? But nothing happened. It's just not even in the stomach. It's not in your blood. You're still dehydrated. Your whole body just needs water. It's still not there. But why you can keep on now, although you should still not function, right? And this is because the signal is there now. The signal says, hey, we have it. And you work, you function. And this is really hard for scientists to swallow, because things are happening beyond the level of our understanding. And that's also fascinating, because there is a lot to learn. But
I want everyone to hold on to what Timo's just mentioned there. So it's really significant about when you drink the water, and even though it hasn't even hit your stomach, let alone the cells, you feel that your thirst is relieved, because that is going to be very important when we come on to talk about the manifestation side of things in a minute. As well as the placebo side of things, we've also got the opposite, haven't we, Nance? The nocebo effect, and this can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, so it's like the opposite side of the spectrum, where if we're believing something's going to go wrong, then a lot of things can go wrong, and sometimes do. And most importantly, though, if we're believing something's, non-beneficial going to happen, then we interpret the events around that as non-beneficial, and we might interpret that as, like a fear response, or hey, this isn't working out. See, I told you, and then it just cascades and spirals down into that, to create that sort of effect.
Yeah, and of course you've got the situation where in certain cultures they still put a hex or a curse on people, and there's numerous accounts where that person will die even though they've not been given any poison, they've not been shot or whatever. But there's so many studies, and people like Joe Dispenza and you are the Placebo book, which I recommend for everyone. There's so many scientific studies now that show that, say, if a doctor tells someone they've got 6 months to live, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if that person believes the doctor. And regardless of how quickly their disease is or isn't developing, they can drop dead within 6 months. And equally, they've had people where they've been given, say, a false diagnosis of cancer and told they're going to die within the year. They die within the year with all the symptoms of the cancer, and then the autopsy shows actually it was a misdiagnosis and there wasn't any. It's incredible, this power of the nocebo and the placebo to cause physical changes in the body as severe as killing someone, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I have a third thing to talk about, is like very linked to that. And that happens to me and a lot of healthcare practitioners I know, that you take over the problem you were dealing with. It's like I would have totally good knees. Then I was treating a girl with knee problem, and suddenly 1 week later I had the exact same problem. And that happens throughout my life all the time. So different friends have different ways to shake off that effect, right? But I'm cursed, like the Scottish would say. So it happens to me all the time, and I don't know how to get rid of it.
I can help with that one, because a lot of people who do energy healing, etc., that's one of the things that you learn, is to make sure that you're not taking on the others. But this leads to another thing, doesn't it? Now, should we talk a bit about Dr. Masaru Emoto's messages from water experiments? Because most living things are about 70% water, is that correct, Timo?
Yeah, 60, 70, yeah, 60%.
70% water. The world is 60, 70% water. And there's these amazing experiments, aren't they, Lance, that Dr. Emoto did, where he was showing the power of words, writings, consciousness to actually completely change the crystalline structure of water molecules.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many experiments of that done. Now, of course, there's ways that people can interpret those. And, I know that mainstream doesn't necessarily accept it, but that honestly doesn't matter, especially right now. It's clear that what is being photographed is beautiful crystalline structures, and those water molecules are being aligned and structured. Something interesting, I know for a fact scientifically that there's been some companies that have tested water, structuring it, and then put it in the plastic bottles and left it on a shelf for 10 months. And these tests were done at Los Alamos in New Mexico at the labs there. And it showed no contamination whatsoever of any plastics into that water after 10 months of sitting on the shelf. So,
Wow.
that's one area to look at further for sure of, okay, if you structure water, is it indeed creating some sort of barrier from outside particulates? At least in that it did, but it'd be cool to see that more. Yeah, beautiful.
I've got I love Flasker. I've got my Flasker water bottle then this, so it structures the water. And quite frankly, how much is the fact that I really love the products and I really love the company and the people that make them, and how much is every time I just look at these beautiful symbols on the glass, my power of my belief is projecting such love into it, because I love this so much. It doesn't matter though, does it? I mean, why is this so relevant to people that we're discussing this, Timo? Why is it so important that people understand the principles of the water experiments, of the consciousness to change the structure of things, of the placebo, the nocebo effect? How can this change our lives?
So I'm not an expert on this one, and I still am at the experimentation phase, so to speak. But I can tell as a scientific mind, and you know it, I'm far more rigid than you and Lance on many things. But when I see that you might change your health by knowing that you can change your health is far more important than what I learned in the medical school. Because if I can do that, why do I need medical school? Of course, I want to know everything. Of course, I want to understand everything. Of course, all that is right. But there is one more layer to it, and we are short of it. We are not there, and most of the practitioners are not there, and people who are there are not medical practitioners anymore. A lot of gurus, real gurus I'm talking about, are somewhere alone because they understood more than we did. And even if they tell us, we don't understand because either we ridicule them or we don't understand, we cannot grasp what they want from us. So it's a bit, I'm lost. So
Lance, why do you think this can have such an impact on people's lives when they really understand the significance of the placebo, nocebo, mind over matter, whatever you want to call it, that how we can influence even the structure of a cell by our thoughts alone?
Well, just because of that specific reason, and I mean, more specifically, it's that we have the power. We have the power to choose ourselves to be healthy, like we've talked about last time with choices, and with what Timo just said on, why go to medical school if you know that you can do it. But of course, there's practical reasons to go. But having that knowledge and that empowerment, I think, is so crucial. And I know for me, when I first started learning and like really understanding that and seeing that, I could change things around me, if I changed myself and really started doing things mentally, but also physically, that I do have the power to change things in my life. So, that sort of really stands out. And that to me is just like the ultimate teaching of, we are creators and we have the power to do what we want with our lives. And we don't have to be beholden to outside forces. We can choose and choose our own path.
It's amazing. And how did you first become aware of this work, Lance? Who sort of opened the door for you?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I bought this book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. And I read it and I didn't really understand it. I kind of got it, but not really. And so I just put it down and, just let it be. And then about a year and a half or 2 years later, I was reading something. I was sort of getting into this information and I read something about the power of the mind, and it just instantly hit me. Oh yeah, I've got that book and I think I should read it now again because I think I'm going to understand it more. And I did. And, it really just started that's what opened the door for me to this information of, choosing the thoughts that I want to think and using the words I want to use.
Fantastic. I must admit, when I was studying for my master's in business studies, we did a module on quantum physics, which when I look back on it is actually really bizarre. It was the first time I'd heard of quantum physics because this was 22, 23 years ago. They introduced me to the work of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and that was just a complete game changer for me. I started looking into it, and this whole different world opened up, but one that made far more sense than what I'd learned through all my scientific training, which, as you were just explaining, Timo, was, all very well up to a certain level, but there was so much that sat outside that couldn't be explained by what we knew even now scientifically. So I think it's really wonderful when people start, seeing this cascade effect and sort of opening up and keep questioning. Because when people start to take responsibility that they can really impact their own health, happiness, wellness themselves, it's a fantastic place to be, isn't it? That you're taking away that dependency. It doesn't mean we can't use the tools of the medical profession, the veterinary profession, the nutraceuticals, whatever, but it does open up a whole different range of possibilities for people, doesn't it?
Yeah, but again, we are going back to impulse, energy, and material. So things can happen, especially same goes for acupuncture and especially acupuncture and similar things that are based on impulse only work if you have enough energy and material to realize it. So if you don't have those things, if you don't have good food in your body, if you don't have building blocks, there is nothing to build. It's you can dream about it, you can really hope you can do it, but what you can mentally change is in the realm of impulse. So the rest has to somehow be there to be able to make it happen. That's why good food is so important, and good water is important, good air is important, because these are the basics we build things on. And if we don't have it, it's not important how much we dream of, or who's the hex doctor, or he's saying this and that, that we cannot really correct things if we don't have enough to correct, if it makes any sense. So the mind can only start to really function if there is something to work with. If that is not there, you can. So for instance, you can dream of flying, and I'm not talking about gliding. We are talking about flying, the real flight like a bird. And you can jump from any place and you will not be able to, because you don't have feathers. But gliding is a different thing. Maybe you can glide because maybe you can create some powerful force between you and the gravity. Maybe you can. That's a different story. But if you think about flying, the flight needs a certain thing, which is called the wing. And if it's not there, you probably will not manage. So if you have a dream of flying, try from 1 meter height or something to make sure that it's not fatal. So
that's where I give a safety warning to all listeners not to jump off buildings. So.
Yes. So what I just tried to say is a lot is possible. In health, a lot is possible, because most of the health problems are just things not working well. But as some of the atheist comedians would chuckle right now, but you cannot just regrow the amputated leg. So that is gone. So maybe we can do it in the future. Maybe I'm more aware of things. But right now, no matter how hard you pray or dream of, it just doesn't grow back. But if your nervous system is not working well, and it happened to some animals I saw also, and you're paralyzed, and suddenly you start to feel your legs again, that's the power of your brain. So you can rebuild your nervous system, you can help it, you can do things. But impossible things are still more or less impossible. So that means we have to know where we draw the line of what we want to change, and it has to be within reason, but it has to be within nature. Does it make sense? So what we have, only nature's force, we have nothing else. So we draw from nature, and I'm not talking about nature in a naturalistic or materialistic vision. So I'm talking about nature. Whatever we have, everything around us is a part of nature. And if you have metaphysical forces you believe in, they are also the part of nature. So wherever you draw your force from, it has to be within nature. So if it defies the rules of nature, it will not happen. Not important how creative you are with your mind. But if your mind is one-track mind and you function within that nature, yeah, I think you will succeed.
Well, let's have a little discussion then to lead on from that about the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Now, I think a lot of people will know that, I mean, that's a huge topic in itself. And at least, I think this is probably an underestimation of 70% of of how we perform in a day is from our subconscious mind, that we are running on programs, many of which are set when we're very young. I mean, the Jesuits sort of said, which makes me cringe to think of it, but you know, give me a boy until they're 7 and I will show you the man, because so many of our subconscious programmings happen early in childhood, but also they can be happening, and they very much are still happening at the moment. Lance, how does this play into this picture of the placebo and the nocebo? People understand the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind and how they can control that.
Well, clearly a huge part, and we've talked about this, I think, on the past couple episodes, of how much the subconscious rules what we're doing. You know, what you said, at least 70%. And, you know, it is really just patterns and repetitions that we've learned, even the language that we use and all the words. Like, we all notice that sometimes we all speak in our own ways,
Yeah.
use similar words. That's all programming to one extent or another, or to some extent. And, you know, with that, once you become conscious that there is something else unconscious ruling your actions, once you become conscious of that, then you step into the driver's seat and you can start making choices that are not out of just programming, but, you know, out of your actual conscious, voluntary choice.
It's a massive one, isn't it? Because most people have got very little awareness of how much our subconscious mind is actually driving our lives. And I love, you know, Bruce Lipton, we spoke about him before, but Biology of Belief, and about how we can look at our current lives and where we're at now, and that tells us what our subconscious programming has been, because it's all around us. It's the blueprint of our lives, and some of that we'll be very happy with. You know, it can serve for us. We don't want to have to learn to drive every day that we get up. We don't want to have to learn to walk, how to put our trousers on. Timo, you were talking last time about the pants and the different leg you put in your pants. But equally, a lot of the time it doesn't serve people, can it? And all of these things, the more you understand it, you can use that understanding for the good, but you can also use it as a control mechanism as well.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Media, or let's say media, I don't like the word that much, but typical advertisement business is built on you accepting things the way they want you to accept, and to go with their narrative and not with yours, what you need, what you have to have, how you have to feel. And this is actually this is also the charm of Instagram, isn't it? Instagram tells you people are living the best life all the time. It's like, and if you do how they do, use the same makeup they do, and I mean, if you are influenced by their influencing power, everything is fine, everything will be good, right? And this is exactly where the trouble is. The trouble is that your subconscious mind chooses a path to make you survive. The problem is your subconscious mind has no consciousness, so whatever is in there, it will follow it. And the modern advertisement system is based on this function. So as much as they can manipulate it, you will follow the way they want you to move. And same goes for politics, same goes for healthcare. I mean, in some countries you cannot have TV advertisement for medicine for that reason, or alcohol or cigarettes or whatever, because yeah, the cowboy was so free and super good and died from lung cancer. But yeah, he was the most prominent thing in TV when I was a kid, the Marlboro Man. So that's why I think that the subconscious mind plays such a huge role. But most of the people right now lives on Mother Earth are believing in religions that tell them they have free will, and everything they do is their own fault or own merit, which is totally false. So I'm not saying that people shouldn't own their mistakes, but most of the things we do are the result of what we lived before, not what we think now.
Yeah.
So, and I think that this is where the biggest problem we have in society, that the past of a person plays a huge role and far bigger role than the now of that person. And the moment we understand it, then we can see people in different light, and we can see ourselves in different light, and start to correct the programming, instead of trying to function differently if in the 5% of consciousness we have, although we let the 95% stay the same. And we cannot correct things like that. You cannot just paint a building differently and make the foundation stronger. So the paint will have no impact on the foundation. And if the foundation is spongy, no matter what color you put on, you're doomed.
So now I'm coming to Lance to lighten the tone a bit.
We're
not going to stay in a doom state for long. Now, Lance, the good thing is there's lots of tools and techniques now that people can do to influence their subconscious mind and set new habits and new programs into it, aren't there?
Yeah, so much. I mean, just the first thing that, you know, I've spoken about now multiple times is breathing and just becoming aware of your breath. And I think that's a really good place to begin for people, because if you can literally just sit there and just become conscious, okay, how am I breathing? Then you do become more in the present moment and literally conscious of what's happening right now. And from there, then you can start, you know, if it's affirmations you want to do, or if it's, you know, some new situation you want to have different conscious thoughts about, you know, that's a good time to do it. You know, reading uplifting books and books that are about self-development and personal development. You know, I know people also will put words like sprinkled throughout their home, like on note cards or certain places, to just be a conscious reminder of, hey, think this or remember this. So those are really easy things, and I utilize essentially all of it. I do reading, and I, you know, write and say my affirmations of what I want to create and intend for my day. And that brings me into that present moment of consciously choosing what I would like.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. I mean, I know that, you know, a lot of people are very into the mindfulness at the moment. And, you know, the beauty of mindfulness is it's keeping you in the conscious mind, so that when the subconscious thoughts are coming up, you're aware of them and you can consciously change them. I mean, a lot of our programming, we talked earlier about how much of the programming happens in humans before the age of 7, when humans are largely in, I think, a theta brainwave state, which is similar to the hypnosis state, when they're very open, everything's going straight into their subconscious mind. But when we get older, we've seen from the last 2 years, it's very easy to program people, and it's by habit, isn't it? You know, look how quickly habits come into the norm. You know, we've got rid of the word cold and cough from the vocabulary now and replaced it with a word that we won't mention on this program.
Yeah, that is
but it's very, very easy when you repeat it to actually form new habits. But once you've got that awareness that this is happening to it, you can start noticing it and changing it. I wanted to ask you both because you've got both very good medical knowledge. Now, what is the name of it? Let me see why I wrote it down. We now know that our thoughts are not contained within our brain, that they actually submit electrical impulses out into whatever you want to call it, the ether, the atmosphere, the divine matrix. And there's machines that have actually measured this. I think they're called MEG machines or something, Timo.
Yeah, so yes, this is an interesting one also. It is not just that your thoughts are happening as a growing physical frequency range. Everybody's thoughts and energy is also having the same impact on you. So
Exactly.
in you. So and this is on DNA level. It's not just happens to your brain, it also happens to your DNA. So you can I can curse your DNA in a sense that I say your DNA is shitty, what a shitty DNA, and suddenly your DNA might react to it. And this this is yeah, it from one side some people are so strong that that doesn't matter, right? Like Boris Johnson. But some but some people are really open to those things. Like they are really getting extremely easily affected by the impulses from outside. Can be positive, can be negative, but can cause them to go to a successful life, can cause them also to jump from a cliff. So these are the people who are followers, and the majority of population, not important of animals or humans, are made out of followers. So that's why it's important to have your own group of free thinkers around you, so they keep you in check and show you that nothing, everything is like the others make you feel like, because everything's perception, right? So it's very easy if you watch a horror movie, just open some laughter and some funny music somewhere and close the sound of the horror movie. Suddenly what you watch has no impact on you whatsoever as a horror or horrifying feeling, right? The emotions are totally gone. Why? Now the impulse that comes to your ear doesn't fit the one that is coming from your eyes, and this other one is just like zeroing the effect of the horror movie. So that means that everything is perception. Something that might scare you shitless now has zero effect just because something else is there. Like a small, you can have a small candle in a dark room and suddenly it's not scary anymore.
Yeah.
Although the room didn't change, right? So, and I think that's important, and it really happens outside your brain. And I don't want to go too deep into this because for some people it's really esoteric. And there is the discussion between if you have ether, if you have dark energy, whatever, the ripple effect and whatnot, scalar waves, whatnot. It's very deep. But I can make you 100% sure that whatever you feel or think has an impact on everything around you. And it's bigger than just happening in you. And that you can see from people's aura. Policemen can pick that up from meters away, from not your body language, but somehow how you feel. Like, do you feel like someone who wants to run away, or are you self-confident? And they can 100% feel it, although they have no, dogs can feel it. And they say it has something with the pheromones. I would agree, except small children don't have strong pheromones, and animals still know if they're afraid or not, and from miles away. So it's not just the smell, it's not just the physical things we think. It's physical, but on a total different energetic level. And I cannot explain it, so I'm not going to act like I know very well how it's happening. I know it's an electromagnetic field, all that we know. But I think there are more layers to that than we think we know.
There's so many influences from all sorts of levels where people aren't aware of, aren't there, Lance? And you're very right. I mean, animals can sort of pick up the, let's just call it the energy of someone or another animal very, very clearly, often long before humans can. Yeah. How important is people to be aware of this, Lance, and to sort of start really noticing these things?
Greatly important. You know, first for the obvious reason of being aware of, you know, how to just knowing that, you know, what the vibration you have and what you're thinking and feeling, how you're choosing to present yourself literally is creating an energy that others can feel and sense and see. And it really is sort of like, you know, you step into a room and it's got good vibes and you just know it, or the opposite. And, you know, you can just tell, yeah, I agree, Timo, the body language plays a role. And I agree at the same time, like there's also just things where it just goes beyond all the senses and you just know, like there's just a knowing that something's amiss, or like, this is perfect, this is right. You know, and I know experiments done on pets, particularly dogs, and their precognitive states of being able to sense when their owners are coming home. You know, clearly that's not happening because of pheromones or, you know, something like that. It's something much stronger in the sense that it reaches much further.
I've got a really good example of that. So years ago, it must have been about 10 years ago, I was part of a program on BBC Horizon, The Secret Life of Cats, and they tracked a lot of cats and radio collared them. Now, at that time, I was working from this office here, and I had a couple of people that were working with me. And my job took me out and about. They were office based in here, and I had all my cats at home. I had 6 cats at that stage. And my job, I'd be going off to do consults working with animals all over the country. So I didn't have a regular timetable. It wasn't that I left at 9 and came back at 5. And the ladies that work for me all used to have a giggle because they said, we always know when you're coming home, because about 20 minutes before you arrive home, because I know I in those days didn't really used to use mobile phones much, only for emergencies. They said, we always know because about 20 minutes before you're coming home, all the cats will appear back in the garden. Now, the people who were doing the radio tracking for this program filmed that. They said, right, okay, we're going to test this out. So they told me not to tell anyone what time I was coming home. All the cats had collars on them. Unfortunately, this bit wasn't in the program because they'd run out of time. And sure enough, almost to the minute, 20 minutes before I came back, all the cats came back into the garden. No one knew I was coming home then. I didn't know what time I was going to be exactly home because it depends on traffic and everything, you know. It's uncanny, absolutely brilliant. And there's all these energetic forces that on a pure scientific level, we don't really understand, as you were saying, Timo, but they are absolutely there. Look at the fact that in tsunamis, the animals all pick it up miles away. And I had an example, a perfect example yesterday, which was heart-wrenching for me. So on one of my favorite walks I do near me, there's a couple of deer parks. And yesterday, in one of the deer parks, in the house where they were talking to the owners of the deer parks, there was a wildlife control person, which basically meant they were going to go in and cull the deer. Now, when I walked down past the deer, even though I hadn't seen the truck, the deer couldn't see the truck, the deer couldn't hear the truck because the house was quite a way away. All the deer were hiding, cowering in the farthest area of the field. Obviously, they couldn't get out. So as soon as I saw them, I knew there was something wrong. I walked 5 minutes down the road and then I see it. Somehow those deer had picked up and seen that and knew what was going to happen. It was so obvious. Their behavior was so out of character. It was awful. Ruined my day, really.
Were you able to open the fence?
I was so tempted. I kid you not. I was so tempted. It was heart-wrenching because I should have opened the fence. I should have opened the fence and taken the consequence of it. But last time one of the deer got out, they shot it. So probably would have had the same effect, and probably more would have been, rather than them picking off the older ones. And I know lots of people eat meat and things like this, but to me, if you're, you know, penned in a fenced area and relying on humans for feed, and then they go in and anyway, different matter. But the point was, they sensed it. They couldn't see it, they couldn't hear it, but they knew exactly what was going to happen, and that was blatantly obvious by their behavior.
So one day, especially in the United States, we will change the money and we will write "in gut we trust" on it. The gut. So I think we really have to learn how to trust our gut. But I think intuition is also trainable, and sometimes you shouldn't trust your intuition because your subconsciousness might trick you into something. But generally speaking, there are people I know with very good intuition, and I'm one of them. So if my gut says something and I don't listen, I'm always sorry, always, always sorry after. So I know that people have energy, animals have energy, buildings have energy, systems have energy, and but sometimes we are tricked into liking them too, although shouldn't be liked at all.
Yeah. Now, energy psychology, there's lots of different methods of energy psychology, where one of which is super learning. Have either of you heard about that?
Yes.
Yeah. What have you heard about that, and what do you know about that, Lance? Because it's fascinating.
I mean, just enough to be able to talk about what I know with like frequencies and how certain, like you're talking about the theta state and the alpha state are good states to learn in. And that, there's ways of enhancing your cognitive abilities, and you can tap into more of like the flow state, or just different states of mind or states of consciousness that help you either learn a lot or do a lot, or get a lot done. So that's what I know about it. What can you tell us, Catherine?
Well, very, very similar for that. And again, I first heard about this through Bruce Lipton's work. I mean, obviously, you can watch the Matrix movie and see how it works as well. But, from Bruce Lipton does a lot of work in terms of almost working, as you say, at the theta brainwave. So he does a lot of techniques where you can listen through headphones to things when you're drifting off to sleep. So you're falling into the theta stage. And they've had amazing results with changing subconscious programming through it. But also people have used it to learn new skills incredibly quickly and everything. So I'm going to try this out and we'll see how it works for me. So I'll report back on that. But the exciting thing is a lot of these things, a lot of ancient people have known about these techniques for ages. Look at, as you were mentioning, acupuncture, Timo, earlier. And now they can actually measure scientifically meridians and acupoints energetically. Suddenly it's got credibility. But obviously, ancient traditions knew this worked long before they needed science to actually prove it worked. And I really feel we're moving into an age now where more and more regular people are becoming exposed to these techniques and the power of, once you understand the placebo, everyone's heard of the placebo, but I don't think many people really take on board that when you understand the power of that, how much impact that can have on you being able to change all aspects of your life.
Yeah, it's like nanoparticles. When I talk about nanoparticles, you think they're small, but you don't really actually understand how small. When I talk about something that is 20 nanometers big, it's like a dog in the forest. It's so small compared to everything else around it. And same goes for the effect of energies in different mental states. So that we think that the mental state, like it's a mood of, oh, I feel good or I feel bad. It's just your brain works in a total different way. Your brain has a total different role right now. When I check my kids, my 3-year-old, I mean, he likes to do things I would think that in his age no kid would do, but because he catches all those things from me and from his elder brother, he's programmed into something that is not a toddler anymore. And his brain is constantly switching between many languages and many ways of thinking, different logic, and that shows that the brain is capable to function in total different waves and different states according to what we have around us. And when we are grown up, though, some problem that we don't talk about happens, and that is you are vulnerable in different states of your life for reprogramming, which we talked last week about, especially women having extreme trauma before they get cancer, like several years before they get cancer. And that happens mostly in those traumatic times when they were vulnerable mentally, because in a state of learning, and they learned something terribly horrible, horrifying for them. And that changed constant in their subconscious functioning, right? It suddenly, their subconsciousness now have total different scar in it. Let's say a bug, or let's say piece of code that is detrimental for the person's health. And suddenly everything goes, so downhill. But I don't want to be negative anymore today. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about downhills anymore. So let's talk about uphills, Lance.
Going up hills, it is a really important thing. One of the main things that I think is my takeaway from this discussion and all the reading and work, that I love this subject. I really, really am passionate about this subject, because there's so many different people now that are working on this, that can help explain it. Everyone will resonate with a different way of it being explained to them, different examples, but there's so many people that are scientifically studying it. Look at Wim Hof, who, you know, it was only a few years ago that, you know, as scientists that we all are, you know, we were all taught that you had no control over the autonomic nervous system, and we now know that that's not true at all. So as these people start pushing the boundaries and showing with real normal people who do go through spontaneous healing, who do dramatic changes to their lives in all areas, it's a bit like the 4-minute mile. Once you realize that a normal person has done this, it becomes accessible to all of us, doesn't it, Lance?
Yeah, exactly. And you get more used to it, and you get more comfortable and confident with testing things out. You know, I remember testing different small things of like what I like wanted to appear in my life, you know, some sort of object, and just test it and just see what happens. And, you know, things would just start appearing. And, you know, it's definitely helped me to, at minimum, keep me in a more happy, positive state of mind, focusing on what I want. And of course, I'm not anything near perfect with that. I'm still doing a lot of growing and learning with that, but just being aware of it is the first step. And, you know, you can start to change things just with that initial awareness.
Yeah. In terms of resources for people, before we get onto tools and techniques, but in terms of resources for people, books, people to listen to, etc., Timo, have you got any particular favorites that for someone that's interested in this subject matter and how it could impact their lives that you would point them towards?
All right, this is a big subject for me. So one thing I would suggest is to find the right music for yourself. That's interesting. Maybe it feels like, but find the music that elevates you and keeps you, it resonates with you. So when it's in your brain, you feel like, yeah, that's a part of you, because that unlocks some of the theta waves. And that is a good resource to go. So first, find your favorite music. Not important, I totally disagree with Lance here. It could be heavy metal, it can be the hardest music, or it can be the softest music. It can be Gustav Holst, like, oh my God, the world is going down. Or it can be Britney Spears, if you like it. But find music that elevates you and makes you feel like, okay, you are vibrating with it, right? For me, that's an open C chord, C2. I feel like, oh, this is it. So this is one, not one more one. Read Bruce Lipton. So he explains things far better than I can. And
sorry, who's that? Bruce Lipton?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just read it. So not important what you read from Bruce Lipton, even small things, because you will catch so many small details about yourself you didn't know exist. And one thing about Wim Hof is he's not controlling his autonomous system himself. He's signaling things that controls it. So this is exactly we were talking about at the beginning. He is signaling to his body. He knows what signal will cause what. And most of the military people know that too. And ancient people knew it too. It's not important if you know the medical or the scientific details about it. If you know the cause and effect and the result, then you are there. So you don't have to know everything in between. You don't have to become a scientist to understand yourself. You just have to know, okay, I drink water, I pee. This is always like that. If I don't, I don't. You don't need to know the uric acid cycle to understand this as a fact, right? Or you can also exploit that. So if you want to pee more, you drink more, and you suddenly, yeah, I drink more, I pee more. You don't have to understand anything else. You just have to know, when I do this, this happens. And I think if you can really break down to this pragmatic level, many things can change in your life. If you forget about the details you don't need and concentrate on the things that really have an effect on you, then I think this is the easiest way to start. But Bruce Lipton, for me, is the right guy. And I think I resonate with his mind the most from his books, because he understands the mechanics and machinations behind the human mind. And I think it's a very good start for each and every one of us to understand how much of a control we have now and how much of a control we could have and what kind of effect we could have from that control. That's why for me it's number one.
Fantastic. What about you, Lance?
So Molecules of Emotion by Dr. Candace Pert. She worked at the NIH, and she was a neuroscientist and a biophysicist and a pharmacologist, and she talked in this book, just very fascinating. She talks about her life in it as well, and just different stories going on at the NIH. It's a fascinating read, but the science in it's very interesting too. And it's right in the same path there with Bruce Lipton. I know that they collaborated together when she was alive, but that book really opened my mind in a lot of new ways.
I love both of those, and I wasn't really familiar with Dr. Candace Pert until you introduced me to her, Lance. And then I've been listening over the last week or two to quite a lot of her lectures on YouTube, which you can find. And she's so engaging to listen to. Again, very much like, I mean, Bruce Lipton, I just adore. I also would add to that list Greg Braden. So The Divine Matrix was one of the books. I'm just reading it again, actually, that completely changed my life. Because it just explained things in a way that was really right for me and where I was there, and understanding how we all sort of fit into this collective consciousness. Obviously Joe Dispenza as well is another really good one, for particularly for those of you that really like to understand the science behind things. He's very, very good at that. So there's lots out there that you can really tap into, but I think never has there been a more important time now, because a lot of people are disengaged with mainstream media. A lot of people have realized that television is tell-a-vision, and we are being programmed by watching programs on it. All these little bits of the jigsaw puzzle are starting to fall into place. But of course, there's so much we're not aware of, which is the exciting bit. So just think how good things can really be. And I have personally been part of quite a few experiences where people have had the most miraculous spontaneous healing events. So I've now seen it with my own eyes that it really is possible. And once you have seen that, then you open your mind up, conscious mind up, to a completely new way of doing things. So let's finish off today with a few practical tips. I know, Lance, you've already talked about the breathing, and Timo, the music. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? Let's start with you, Lance.
I know that some meditation halls and just different places, and some people in their homes, I don't do this, but it is a practice that you have a bell or some sort of sound that goes off every 15 minutes or 30 minutes to just remind you in your home or wherever, okay, come back to the present moment, be conscious of what you're thinking, what are you doing, and just, come back to that moment. That's one. I think just doing things like mindful eating or mindful walking, that's all part of mindfulness, and being conscious of what's happening. Those are really good exercises and practices to incorporate too.
Love that. Really love that. What about you, Timo?
So I'm going now. If you really want to become really conscious of what's happening, try to drive a car in Delhi. Try to drive a car in Delhi, in India or Istanbul, and you will realize that you need all your senses all the time to survive. But joke aside, I think the best way to regain consciousness is to remind yourself physically with papers, notes, voice messages, any type of thing, whatever you like, that brings you back, exactly like Lance said, to your mind and not to someone else's vision of your life. Because this is what we normally live. We live always someone else's vision, and those visions are mostly forced into us with, as you said, TV, internet, influencers, advertisement, physical, mental, school education. I'm not against education. It's just the form of education right now is really terrible. And also indoctrination of any type of belief or religion, any type of thing that forces you to think a certain way. I would like to remind you that your brain is unique and your life is unique, and everybody else can F off.
Oh,
this is
absolutely.
Exactly, Timo.
I would just like to encourage people to have a look at their morning routine and do 3 things differently. So Timo, you spoke a couple of podcasts ago about, do you always put your left leg or your right leg in your pants or your trousers first?
Yeah.
I would like people to, just from the next time they wake up in the morning, whatever time zone you're listening to this on, just first of all, take note of what your morning habits are. Do you reach for your phone straight away? Do you go and get a cup of coffee or whatever? And note what those are, and then change it for 3 to 4 weeks. Just consciously do 3 different things as the first things you do when you wake up in the morning, and just see what impact that has on your life. Because definition of insanity is you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Well, if you want to change something in your life, just start by changing a few subtle things of the way you start your day and see what happens, and let us know.
Yeah, that's actually the definition of many drummers. So what makes the drummers so insane? Actually, mostly they are the most crazy person in the group, although they are not jumping to the crowd mostly. But what makes a drummer mostly the most insane person is that he dares to play something that he normally plays always with right, now with left. And he forces himself to do it for a while till his left is as good as his right. And I think that's why I think a lot of rhythmic people are more sophisticated in their thinking, because it forces you to understand that you have to do something different to get different results. And as you said, you cannot keep doing everything the same every day and expect different things. So I would suggest try to go play basketball and always start your steps with left instead of right, and start to jump with left, and try to find out what happens if you right with left. I know it will look really bad, but who knows how fast you can adapt to right with left.
So thank you so much for the discussion. I think this is something that all of us, everyone's going to be finding out a lot more about moving forward, once we're sort of unleashing the true power of our potential. And I'm excited to see what everyone's comments show and what they're noticing and what tips they've got for us all. So thank you, Lance, so much. Thank you, Timo, so much. And we will be back again next week for another exciting one in this series. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Bye.